Today I will be sitting down to rank every single Mario Kart World track, but there's just so much more to this game that I have to mention besides the tracks themselves. This game is massive, expansive, and beautifully interconnected, as all 30 of these courses coexist in a single large explorable world and are all linked together by chaotic and creative highways that bring the racers from one track to the next. And I do think a lot of these in-between moments can be quite wonderful. Some can be quite boring as well, but today I'll be focusing on the meat and potatoes of the game, and every single Mario Kart game before this one as well, the actual race tracks. As mentioned, these 30 distinct courses coexist together, and there are alternate versions of the courses depending on which direction you're heading into the course into. I think that's really interesting, but there's also the main track itself that can be accessed through versus mode, or sometimes even playing online, and that is exactly what we're going to be focusing on today, the 3-lap structures set out on each of these tracks. So let's go ahead and get started with the very bottom of the list and work our way to the best track in the game. We are starting off at the very bottom of the barrel with the D tier. Note, yeah, this is the D tier, not the F tier, as I don't think this track is awful. Koopa Troopa Beach, sure, it's pretty generic, it's literally just a circle, and why exactly it is getting placed at the very bottom of my list at number 30, but it's also kind of necessary in my opinion. I think it's really smart for this game to have something that is just a circle, an option on the versus select menu that you can just race around in a circle, test out bikes, really just come down to who's the better racer in a generic track such as this. Do I think it's the most exciting race of all time? No, it's at the bottom of the list, and I think we could have done without it. I get, again, why it's here, and I don't hate racing on it at all. Some people do, but I personally don't absolutely despise this course. With all that being said, though, it is our very first entry placing itself on our D tier, but that does also mean there's no F tier. There's no track on this game that I hate or despise racing on. This is the lowest as it gets, and it's not that bad. A very similar discussion can certainly be had for Mario Circuit here at 29, as, yeah, you can definitely argue that it shouldn't exist. In fact, we have, like, other Super Nintendo tracks just sprinkled around the world in Mario Kart World, just hanging out as in-between sections, or as little, like, P-block switch missions. This is its own entire course, and yeah, I get that it's the Mario Circuit, and it's kind of cool to have a course that's just a flat racing track instead of these crazy driving on the walls, doing flips, driving on water, crazy ramps. Nothing like that is going on here. You're just driving around on a course. You can really put your pedal to the metal and just race against your friends on this thing. It's not bad for existing. It's just, you know, the other tracks are a lot cooler. So that is why it's placing itself along with Koopa Troopa Beach on the D tier, but again, from here on out, most of these other tracks are legit. A slightly more modern retro track coming in here with Desert Hills from the DS. It's fine, it's just boring. I think Nintendo just always struggles to make really exciting desert tracks in these games, and yeah, this one fits the bill of that exact same criteria. Like, the track layout isn't bad by any means. I don't think the track sucks to drive on or it's miserable and just really uninspired, but it's pretty uninspired. There's not a lot of stuff going on. Sure, there's some interesting shortcuts here and there, but nothing mind-blowing, and this track's just kind of awkwardly to the side of the entire Mario Kart world. It's just sort of hanging out. Do I hate it? Again, I don't hate it. Still not in the F tier, but yeah, from here on out, a lot of the tracks just work a lot better, in my opinion. Fittingly, kicking off the C tier is Choco Mountain, and yeah, it's cool. Okay, again, like, I don't really have a lot to say. This track is sort of odd, if you ask me. It's just a really weird one to bring back. I don't think anyone adores Choco Mountain from the Nintendo 64. Yeah, it was really cool to have it come back in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in its DLC pack, but do we need it again with this weird overlay of these charging chucks and this weird kind of mud pit brawl area? No, I don't really think so. And again, the chocolate vibe is just not there at all. Like, I do not think of chocolate during this course in the slightest. I think it would have been cooler to really lean into that, but they also could have leaned into making this more of a Mario Kart World track with interesting rail grinding and maybe some more on the wall mechanics, and yeah, it's just kind of missing here. It still really sticks to the very same generic layout we have with Choco Mountain that we've always had since Nintendo 64. It's not really doing much to really inspire me. Is that a bad thing? No, it's in the C tier and it's solid enough. Just not going above and beyond as it totally could be if we picked a different retro track to bring back instead. Now, one thing I've really made sure to do before working on this video is avoid any other top rankings for any other YouTubers making a top 10, top 30, whatever list for this game, as I really want to make sure I have my own opinion opinions formed without too much influence from other people. And I really want to see some other lists to see where Peach Stadium is ranked, because I really expected this course going into making this top ranking discussion to be on the, mid to higher end. I thought it was fine. It's the center point of the Mario Kart World. However, after racing on it a few times specifically for this video, there's not a lot going on here, at all, especially in this 3-lap structure that is made for the course, and even some of the other in-between structures when you're driving from, course to course or in a knockout tour and whatnot. There's not a lot going on, and the aesthetic of the course is also just sort of boring. It just sort of looks like a weird floating stadium, but doesn't really have like a cool aesthetic. That sounds really cool on paper, but you're kind of just turning 3 or 4 times and then you do it all over again, and there's these weird little pipes in the middle of the road to serve as obstacles. Like, sure, they're obstacles, but the aesthetic just is odd. They're just random pipes sitting in the middle of the road. I don't know if they're going for like a Mario Kart 8 inspired track with, anti-gravity sections, and it's kind of playing on a classic course theme. I'm not sure really what they're going for here, but I don't love it. I really don't love it, and I'm curious to see other people's opinions on it, but I just overall am a bit disappointed, I have to be honest. Okay, Boo Cinema is one that I'm absolutely terrified to rank on the lower portion of this video, because going into this entire experience of Mario Kart World, driving on this track for the very first time, I was amazed. That moment when you drive into the screen to go into a classic black and white film with the movie reels and the boos and the sepia aesthetic, oh my god, I loved it. I thought this was going to be one of my favorite tracks of all time. And then I kept racing on it and realized, hey, that part is really cool, but that's like the only thing this track has got going on. Besides that, you're just driving into it and then going around a cool little loopy and then leaving. It's pretty, boring, if you ask me. And that may be like a really hot take. Again, I have not seen other people's opinions, and I really want to know other people's opinions on this track, because, hey, this could be like a top 10 track for a lot of people. People could absolutely adore this aesthetic, and don't get me wrong, I do as well. I think the aesthetic is absolutely killer. But the track really hurts. I wish it was a lot more exciting. Again, the big word I can think of is boring. We're in the C tier. These aren't bad tracks. They're just generic and a bit of a disappointment, if you ask me. Starview Peak is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful track and takes place in a beautiful portion of the game. A Rosalina Ice Castle. Super, super cool. The aesthetic is amazing, and I think the course, again, is beautiful, but I really have a similar opinion on this one as I did with Peach Stadium and Boo Cinema. It's just not that fun, unfortunately, to drive on. This one does have a bit of a unique situation going on with a big, large, like 1/3, maybe half of the course taking place on water. And yeah, you're going to learn this throughout the video. I'm very mixed when it comes to the water portions of this game. On one hand, I really like that it's a different kind of style of racing. It doesn't feel like you're racing on the land at all, opposed to, driving underwater in Mario Kart 8. That was just kind of pointless. It just visually looked different. This one feels very different. Does it feel good? No, it doesn't feel bad, it just feels different, and sometimes it can be frustrating to drive on the water because we're so used to driving on land. But back to the actual course of Starview Peak. Again, it's a little generic, it's a little boring, it's a little straightforward, and I do want to have a similar thought as I did with this one with Peach Stadium and Boo Cinema. I think these tracks genuinely work better in a world tour kind of mode as you're driving between track to track. The big draw of this game works in the favor with this track in mind, as it kind of seems like you should be driving on this track for 1 lap, maybe not 3. When it comes to driving this track 3 times back to back to back, it's where it kind of falls apart, and I think that kind of criticism could be said for the last 2 entries as well. But yeah, Starview Peak, do I think it's bad? No, I should probably stop having to clarify this, but I really wish that I enjoyed this one more than I do. Into the B tier with Crown City, and yeah, this one definitely really surprised me, especially the fact that it's on the B tier. We are already on the tracks that I genuinely enjoy racing on in these 3-lap structures. And again, do I hate the last tracks we raced on? No, there was no F tier for a reason, but B tier, Crown City, a bit of a shocker for me. The very first time I raced on Crown City, racing out of the original Mario circuit on my very first Grand Prix in this game, loading that up for the first time, I said, oh, this is kind of rough. That middle portion of the game with that giant highway, yeah, we all know what I'm talking about. That section is not great, but all the other sections of this track really make up for it. Again, it feels like a track that is made to be an intersection on the World Tour mode. It doesn't really have a solid 3-lap structure, as it kind of just feels like one long racetrack driving through different aspects of a city. I think it's really cool, and each section offers something new and unique. And again, I won't lie that the middle portion of the course that you drive on and then eventually fly on as well kind of sucks. It's straightforward and not that fun, but everything else really surprised me as well, to be like, hey, this is This is a lot better of a course than I gave it credit for initially, and really am genuinely happily surprised by it. If you guys happen to see my ranking of every single Mario Kart 8 Deluxe track, then you'll know that I'm not a big fan of Sky High Sundae, as it's kind of just a circle and you're kind of just doing a lot of flips, is exactly what I said about this track in that game. However, complete 180, sort of, in Mario Kart World. I think this really is just a testament to how much better mechanics Mario Kart World surprisingly has than Mario Kart 8, a game that I absolutely adore, don't get me wrong, but this game, or this track, I should say, in this game, works flawlessly, and I definitely think they did this on purpose. Introduce us to this track late into Mario Kart 8 World's lifespan, and say, okay, that's fine, and then go ahead and knock our socks off with the same exact track, but in a different game and a different engine. It's kind of what, you know, Choco Mountain wanted to be, but it actually pulls it off. This is a genuinely fun version of this track, and I'm incredibly surprised by it because, you know, last year, if you asked me what my thoughts on Sky High Sundae were, they wouldn't have been great. Now it's a really enjoyable time every time this track pops up in the selection. I certainly struggled for a while working on where to place Moo Moo Meadows, as there was an argument I definitely could have had with placing it down with the Mario Circuit courses and like Koopa Troopa Beach, as yeah, compared to a lot of the other tracks in this game, you're not doing anything crazy. You're sort of just racing around the track we all very much so are familiar with, Moo Moo Meadows. However, it's just nice. You know what I mean? Like, it's just nice to return to Moo Moo Meadows after all this time and just enjoy driving around a course that is so simple and straightforward, and also a pleasant place that we're all familiar in this giant open world of Mario Kart World. I'm very, very happy that Moo Moo Meadows is in this game, and every time it pops up, I really just genuinely get happy to return to this track. It's very nostalgic for a lot of people for a lot of different games at this point, and I'm glad it is in Mario Kart World. I know some people definitely don't agree with that sentiment, as, hey, we've had a lot of Moo Moo Meadows a lot of times, but now we have it here in this new version, and there's not much really added to this new version, but I gotta have my bias show a little bit at some points in this video and just admit I'm a Moo Moo Meadows fan, and I'm really, really happy it's here. I think it's very easy to look at Faraway Oasis and immediately dismiss it as a track. It's not doing anything crazy. You could compare it somewhat to Desert Hills or some of those other kind of generic dry tracks, but this one's a sleeper hit in my personal opinion. Every time I raced on it, I have a pretty fun time, and I actually genuinely enjoy the track layout. I think it's pretty creative, clever, and fun. It does have a pretty prominent water section on this course, and I did mention I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the water of this game, as, hey, it's something different, something fun. Is it something I really enjoy? To be determined. We'll figure that out in the future, but I am glad that there is something unique about this water course, as, hey, we can go different ways. We don't have to race necessarily on the water every single time. There's a lot of different options this track gives us, and it's up to us to exploit and figure them all out. Okay, the whole water discussion has really come to a head with Wario Shipyard. This is where it makes or breaks if you like water portions or you absolutely despise them, and again, I'm a bit of a weird mix when it comes to this, but yeah, Wario Shipyard, you're in a flooded track, and I think that's great. I actually really am glad there is a track such as Wario Shipyard where we are just completely committing to the water mechanics of this game, and you gotta either sink or swim into it. I think that's really kind of a clever way to design a track. You can either try your hardest to stay out of the water as much as possible, or you can just commit into it and be like, hey, I know how to race on my water, I'm gonna be doing it as best as I can. And I think that's a really fun way to actually tackle this track, so I'm glad it's here. However, I do have to say, sometimes I'm racing on this thing and I despise it. The water is just not working in my favor. The waves, the tides, whatever you want to call it, I am miserable, and I just curse this thing and think it's my least favorite track in the entire game. So yeah, I'm a bit 50-50 when it comes to Wario Shipyard for sure, and ranking this thing definitely was a struggle, but hey, I gotta give it credit where credit is due. It's doing something unique, it's doing something fun, and I really respect every track that does that. I never in a million years thought Peach Beach was gonna come back pretty much ever again. I grew up on Mario Kart Double Dash. All of those tracks are completely nostalgic for me, and seeing a lot of them get cut for the Booster Course Pack and not make its way into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was a little bit upsetting, but now I see a lot of them getting new life in Mario Kart World, and it's actually really exciting and really nostalgic and super fun. Even Peach Beach, a track that I didn't necessarily love but still had a lot of nostalgia for, is getting new life in this game, as there's an entire new portion on the second lap that really mixes up the track to be more interesting, and I adore this section of the track a lot. It's really interesting and really unique and feels like an actual little beachside town that you can drive around in. The third portion of this track sort of sucks though, though. You were really just driving on water, and not like chaotic fun water like Wario Shipyard, but just flat water. I don't know why this, track fell apart in the last lap, but unfortunately, it really did, and that is sad to see. But every other portion of Peach Beach, I genuinely do enjoy, and I'm really happy overall that it is in this game for sure. I'm genuinely pretty surprised I don't have Airship Fortress higher up on my personal list. When I was doing a little quick draft of my predictions of where I was going to rank each of these, this was pretty close to the top 10. However, after racing on it a few times, I just feel like there's something missing. I feel like Airship Fortress definitely could have been more as a course. Sure, it's cool and the layout can be kind of fun, but there's just not a lot there. Sort of just has a few interesting moments, but besides that, nothing even mind-blowing. Yeah, I don't know, I'm a bit disappointed on this map, as it is fun to drive around this course on like the Knockout Tour or driving in from one course to another, but I just feel like it's missing a little something when it comes to playing this in a 3-lap structure from like a versus mode or an online mode. I just feel like it's missing a little bit of that wow factor. And yeah, again, it's not a bad track by any means, I do enjoy it, but a little bit is off and I don't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. Dandelion Depths is a bit of a shocker for me, as I expected my reaction to this track to be rather negative, as it has that very large open water portion, but I think it's a bit different, as this is still water in a giant natural lake. It just feels very beautiful, but also a lot more pleasant and open and natural to drive on. Do I adore this track with my entire life? No, I don't. I do think it's a bit generic and it's not doing anything insane, but I can't lie, I really enjoy racing on this thing a lot. I like the aesthetic as well of like an overgrown, rustic, natural area. That kind of vibe is always really fun and it pulls it off super well here. So yeah, surprisingly, I'm a pretty big fan of Dandelion Depths. Another absolutely beautiful track is Cheep Cheep Falls. Maybe the most beautiful track in the entire game, up for debate for sure, but I do love this thing a lot. Just a very nice, pleasant place to be in. However, that's just visually, because driving on this thing is chaotic. I always have such a chaotic race. Sure, it's probably because of the water, like, yeah, it's because of the water, but it's still super fun to drive around on this track because of that. I know water has been the biggest point of contention like this entire video, but hey, on this track, I think it really works as a chaotic, close, tight, rushing stream that brings all the racers together, and like I mentioned a second ago, chaotic things always happen on this portion of the track. Yeah, it's really fun, really chaotic, and really fast-paced, something I adore on all the tracks. Not top 5, not S tier or anything like that, a lot of water, mixed opinions on that, but hey, I still do like this track a lot, and I think it has a lot to offer in terms of just being fun. At number 14, we have our very first A tier, and yeah, that means there are 14 A tier or, S tier tracks in this game, in my personal opinion, and that's almost half the tracks in the entire game, being tracks I genuinely enjoy racing on. Again, I adore this game. I know there's some contention out there of, this game's quality when it comes to the tracks and comes to the open world, aspects of it, but for me, I absolutely adore it. Okay, let's actually talk about Toad's Factory now. People love this track. I know this was a huge fan favorite, being absolutely begged by so many people to come back into the Mario Kart franchise after its appearance in Wii, and I think it is super cool to finally have it in a big open world chaotic game like this. Sure, chaotic is a great word for it, because this track gets very close up and personal. There's 24 players racing on every single course, and I feel like this track was not made for 24 players at all. Well, clearly it wasn't. It was made for the Wii era, but even more so on this one. It's just very close-knit and tight for everybody on this course. Chaotic, sure, but there can be a lot of fun and anarchy and chaos. So yeah, I adore this track a lot. I think it's very fun. I think there's some unique, interesting ways and methods you can kind of go on it, and lots of alternate paths and railings and different layers to this track as well that I think make it really fun, and one of the big, key factors on having an enjoyable Mario Kart World track. Do I think it's one of my favorite tracks of all time? No, I never have. I've always enjoyed it on the Wii, but it's never been like, hey, this is the Wii track. This is the track I absolutely need, compared to a lot of people out there that really do adore this one. So again, I'm very happy it's here and very happy to have it in my A tier. Is this track doing anything mind-blowing? No, but I still really love DK Pass. It's just such a fun track layout, and I do like the snow aesthetic, and I'm glad that we have a snow, wintry track in this game, especially for like a ski resort kind of vibe. I think it's really fun, and I think this was a great pick of tracks to bring back. Yeah, making it into the, top 15 in the A tier was a shocker for me. I didn't think I loved it that much, but the more I race on it, the more I'm like, hey, this is an incredibly solid track that I really can't find too many complaints about. So, blowing my mind? No, but enjoyable? Absolutely. Oh, side note, did you know this is one of the tracks you can also race on backwards, depending on, which track you're driving into it from? One of those small things that I absolutely love about this game. I wish there were more tracks like this. I think there are a few other ones, but this one I definitely noticed recently, and I said, wait, that is super cool. And again, one of the reasons I love the big gimmick of Mario Kart World. Shy Guy Bazaar has always been one of my favorites in the Mario Kart franchise. I've been dying for this thing to come back since I first played it in Mario Kart 7. I was like, hey, this track is beautiful. I just kind of want it on a modern system, and we now have it with Shy Guy Bazaar. In Mario Kart World, they really open up this track a lot. There are so many alternate paths and routes you can take, which are absolutely necessary in this track, because 24 players on this tight 3DS track is just not going to work unless you're flying all over the place on alternate railings and pathways and routes, and I think that's really cool. There's actually even different alternate paths that you can't normally drive on the 3-lap structure. Sometimes when you're driving into this track, it actually will take you into like the castle or other paths of this little tiny city. I think that is awesome and should have been incorporated in the normal 3-lap structure. Hey, make the 3rd lap you actually drive around in that castle or something like that. I think it would have been cool. So yeah, a bit of a disappointment there, but overall, again, this track is very fun, chaotic, and really creative. The main Mario Bros circuit for this game is barely gonna miss out on our top 10, and I gotta be honest, the first time I raced on this thing, I thought it was fine. I was like, okay, cool, that's Mario Kart World, you know, first expectations going in. Sure, it was just kind of Mario Kart, but the more you understand Mario Kart World and its mechanics and different ways you can just manipulate tiny little things on this track, the more you realize this was an absolutely amazing introductory track. Sure, it looks basic on paper, but there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that you don't really think about the first time you're racing on it. I think that is awesome and one of the best ways to design a course. Have a course be simple enough on paper, something everyone can get behind to drive on, but then really open it up for those people that really want to figure out the absolute giant secrets that every single track has to offer. So in that aspect, I think this course nails it, and it's just a really solid track to kick off this entire game, and I think it's definitely worthy of being this game's Mario Bros circuit. Alright, top 10 time. Kicking us off is going to be a very deserving Dino Jungle, as this was one of those Mario Kart Double Dash tracks that I adored as a kid. I would explore this thing all the time, and I won't lie, I do think, you know, making it a Jurassic Park research facility was the correct move to do, but I do definitely miss the jungle aesthetic that really leaned into Mario Kart Double Dash's style, as I thought that was really cool, but again, I do have to admit, the Jurassic World aesthetic works a lot better. But how about the track? You know, how does the track race after all these years finally being brought back? Really good. It's just such a solid track, and yeah, definitely think that a big part of this being so high up and making this top 10 is nostalgia. I have to be completely honest and come clean with that, but I do still, like I said, think the track is incredibly solid and really fun to drive on. Solid, smaller shortcuts make up little things where you can close the gaps on difficult parts of the course. I think that's really awesome and the correct way you should be designing these tracks. I also do think it's really cool how they incorporated the dinosaurs in this track. Sure, the aesthetic, I still like the old one a little bit better. I know that's a weird opinion, but the dinosaurs actually walking around, interrupting the race, and being very active on the entire course is really cool and absolutely something that was needed to be done. And, you know, also tricking off the dinosaurs, growl grinding on their backs. Like, that is just so cool. Come on, like, that is just such a cool thing to be doing on a Mario Kart course. Are you kidding me? So, yeah, this one is absolutely deserving to be on the top 10. The first time I raced on Acorn Heights, I thought I had an all-timer on my hands here, and I still really do enjoy this track, as, you know, it's very much so open. There are so many visible, clear paths that you can take, and I think that's the big draw of the track. As you're driving through each section, there's just so many different routes and different unique mechanics you can combine together to make the best possible path for yourself going forward, and however you want to race, you can do it. A very open track, something I adore in all my tracks. So, yeah, that is a big pull for this one. Do I think it's as, you know, creative and unique as I initially thought? No, I don't think so. A lot of the paths do kind of just end up being the same thing, but the options are still definitely there, and I don't think any of the options are bad or not enjoyable at all. It's just, you know, not blowing my socks off like I thought it was going to initially. But yeah, again, top 9, top 10 track. I adore this one for sure. Salty Speedway was the very first track I decided just to sit down and explore in time trial mode. See just how many little secrets I could find, how many different alternate pathways and cut-throughs I could really discover by myself, and there's a lot. Yeah, this track has a lot of stuff going on. There are so many different levels and layers to this track that made me think, hey, how many other tracks have this much creativity and stuff going on that I just don't see the first time you're racing alongside it? It's really kind of cool. And yeah, there is the giant open water section on this track, which, you know, me in the water, that's been a whole thing, all video, but the whole cool thing about this track is that you're trying really hard to avoid that water. You're driving on the walls, you're driving on rails all around, jumping over this main water path. until the end where you have to drive on the water. If that last section was just a little bit different where you're not on water the whole time, this would probably be a top 5, top 4, top 3 track, because I love so much about this track except for that last little portion. But even besides that, this track is great. So many secrets, so much creativity, and I think this one will definitely grow on a lot of people if it hasn't grown on you quite yet. DK Spaceport is one of the coolest tracks Nintendo has ever done. Sure, it's not doing anything insane or mind-blowing, but it's just really, really clever and fun. And the first time I raced on it on that very first initial Grand Prix, I've never had a feeling like that playing on Mario Kart before. It felt like a true mad dash to the finish. Everyone was fighting for that #1 spot, and every single time you did one of those big turns to go into a new section, you didn't know what was going to be coming up ahead of you. And sure, after racing on it a few times, these little sections aren't doing anything insane, but it just still feels like such a mad dash to that finish line. It really feels like every single part is unique and creative, and anything can really happen here. It really reminds me a lot of Fall Guys. I know that's random, and maybe that's just me, but I just really get a good classic arcade fun vibe from this track. And yeah, arcade fun is a great way to describe it. It is obviously very much so inspired by Donkey Kong, and yeah, it looks like the classic Donkey Kong arcade, but even more importantly, it plays like it. I think that's insanely impressive to do for a racing game. And sure, I'm not as mind blown by this track as I used to be, but I still really do enjoy it a lot and think this offers a very unique perspective in a Mario Kart game. Never in a million years would I have expected Wario Stadium of all things to be, this high up in my rankings, because this track, if you don't know, is inspired by the Nintendo 64 version of this track. And I said inspired because this does not race like that version at all. The Nintendo 64 version of this track kinda sucks. It's pretty boring and not one that a lot of people have been asking for to come back into the games, but seeing it in this game, playing it in this engine with all the new additions that they have on this course, the alternate railings, alternate pathways, and the shortcuts you can take on this course are actually incredible. Yeah, this is one of the absolute biggest surprises I've had for this entire game. Playing on this track for the first time on time trial and just realizing how fast and how fun you can really take this entire experience was such a genuinely great surprise. And every time I race on it, I'm having a fantastic time. Sure, the aesthetic is kind of boring. It could be like that on purpose. It looks like a homemade racetrack, something Wario just threw in his backyard because he wants to be like Mario. And I think that aesthetic works, but it's also kind of ugly in that regard. Again, it's supposed to be, but I would say the aesthetic of the track is my biggest complaint for it. And again, it's not bad in any means. And this track definitely is really, really fun. It's absolutely one of the biggest surprises I've had playing this game, especially playing a retro track in this game. All right, we have made it to our top 5. We have made it to our S tier tracks on this game. And yeah, I'm happy to say that there are 5 S tier tracks in my personal opinion on this game. And the first one kicking us off is going to be Rainbow Road. Oh my god, this is a mind-boggling Rainbow Road. It is one of the longest courses I think we've ever had in Mario Kart history, and it really feels like the finale of this game, and more so of like the entire series. They put their all into this track, and you can absolutely tell. Sure, it doesn't have that typical 3-lap structure, and you could argue that it's sort of plays like the Knockout Tour mode, where it's just a long, continuous path. And yeah, I'm sure people do have that complaint for the track, as it doesn't race in the traditional way, but to me, that's what makes it such a great, symbolic track for Mario Kart World. This Mario Kart is supposed to feel and play differently, and Mario Kart World's Rainbow Road certainly does that. And on top of that, this track is beautiful. Oh my god, probably the best looking Mario Kart course we've ever gotten. Like, they really, again, just put their all into this course and went above and beyond to make this thing absolutely stunning. So yeah, this course is stunning. It plays really well. It plays really unique, and one of my favorite Rainbow Roads we ever had. Of course, I'm having it in my top 5. There is a lot to unpack with Bowser's Castle and Mario Kart World. There is so much going on in this track, and I do know that there's a really advanced way to play this track as well. There's some really crazy shortcuts, and seems like game manipulations and crazy cuts you can make by riding on walls and doing these weird drops and stuff, and a lot of these top tracks have things like that. So that is really crazy and really cool, and I just love that this game lets the players have that much creativity and freedom when it comes to racing on these courses. The top 4, the S tier tracks, are phenomenal, and Bowser Castle, as I mentioned, is one of them, and a big reason is it's fast. I love when tracks just let you go fast. This one and Rainbow Road have those weird, like, boosted energy panels where you're just driving consistently faster than any other track. Really feels like that 200cc coming back from Mario Kart 8, and I love it. I am absolutely a sucker for that. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of Bowser's Castle in this game. I really can't complain too much about it. There's a lot going on. It's a little chaotic, it's a little hectic, but hey, that's Bowser's Castle for you. It should feel like that. So I adore Bowser's Castle a lot, just missing out on the top 3, but hey, this track is phenomenal. Basically, all the great things I've said about a lot of these tracks can be applied to Dry Bones Burnout. There are just so many different alternate paths and routes on this course, and I just think that is such a great mechanic to have in this game, and it really opens up this entire experience to be absolutely unique. And this track really takes advantage of all of that, and on top of that, the track is beautiful. The aesthetic is perfect. A Day of the Dead themed Dry Bones course going over lava. Are you kidding me? Like, it's just perfect. And the interconnecting paths going above and below each other. You can drive on the walls, you can drive on railings, you can basically drive anywhere. It really seems like a lot of times you're going to be flying out of bounds, but then Lakitu doesn't show up and you just keep going. There's so many layers to this track. Man, it is phenomenal. I really cannot wait for people to crack the code and just see how fast and how chaotic we can really get on Dry Bones Burnout. I feel like I don't play it a lot, and I think that's such a shame. I really want this one to come up more, whether I'm playing online, whether I'm playing whatever. I definitely am a huge fan of Dry Bones Burnout. Evidently, you know, number 3 on my top list. So, phenomenal track and one of the best in the game and one of the best we've ever had, honestly. This track is stunning. It has been such a toss-up between 1 and 2 for so long, and I really am not even sure if I want to put this one in number 2 or number 1, because Great Question Block Ruins is incredible. Even though I have been avoiding seeing other opinions online of, you know, top rankings of what everyone else's favorite track is in this game, I know that this is going to be a lot of people's top 1 and top 3 at least. This track is phenomenal. As I mentioned with Dry Bones Ruins, having the options and availability of so many different pathways to grind on railings, grind on walls, fly through the air, really opens up this game to be incredibly unique, and no track does that better than probably Great Question Block Ruins. It plays unlike any other course we've had in Mario Kart history, and that is such a compliment. I know that it's really up in the air people's long-term opinions of this game are going to be, but I think we can all come away from this game agreeing Great Question Block Ruins is a fantastic display of this game's deeper mechanics. There are just so many different paths and routes, and it juggles its 24 player count perfectly. Even though it just seems so straightforward, there is so much depth to this world and on this level. And again, the aesthetic is stunning. Thankfully, this gameplay I captured was on a sunset, so I had that extra beautiful background vibe going for me, but an ancient Mayan-inspired ruins floating in the air of the iconic question block that so many Mario Kart courses and Mario history bases itself around of. Super cool, super fun, super unique. I adore this track to death. Like I mentioned, this easily could have been the number 1. Some days of the week, it might have just been my number 1, but today it is landing its spot at number 2. I'm going to let my bias show a little bit and select a different track that I, again, absolutely adore come out on the number 1 spot. I am so very proud to have Whistle Top Summit at my number 1 spot on Mario Kart World. It is my favorite track in this game, and it really is surprising to me personally. I always enjoyed it, especially the first time I raced on it. I thought, you know, this is a fun track. Sure, it has unique mechanics with the rail grinding and whatnot, but the more I raced on it, the more I tried to understand the deeper things going on, not just on this track, but for Mario Kart World as an entire game. The more I've come to understand that this track is kind of phenomenal. It really pulls off everything unique about Mario Kart World and bundles it all together to be one singular track that is genuinely extremely fun to play on. There is so much to explore and discover with this track, whether it's with the railings, whether it's riding on walls, whether it's the multiple paths you can kind of take with this course. And again, the railing mechanic being the core concept for this track is really interesting. It's a mechanic that I think a lot of us, including myself, didn't expect a lot out of when this game was initially announced and this mechanic was featured. I thought, okay, we can drive in a straight line. Cool, sounds exciting, but no, there's a lot more going on, especially switching from rail system to rail system, jumping in between different pathways and trying to dodge different shells coming down that solid path that are most certainly going to hit you, and jumping around and finding the shortcuts and finding tricks off railings into walls, onto trains, onto what have you. It is so cool, and I adore this track a lot. Every time I race on it, I'm finding something new on this course, and I really genuinely believe this is the best crafted course in the entire game, and after racing on these tracks multiple times to make this video, I can come out saying, hey, Whistle Top Summit is something special, and I'm so very happy that it's here, and my pick for the number 1 course in this game. Alright, that is going to wrap it up for my ranking of Mario Kart World tracks, and oh my gosh, this video was very hard to make. My opinion was changing all the time, but thankfully I have a ranking here that I am incredibly proud of and very happy is my final ranking of these courses. This game is phenomenal. I really do adore Mario Kart World a lot. I know there's a lot of different opinions going on out there about this game. Personally, I'm excited to see what other track rankings are going to be. I can finally watch those videos in my watch later playlist, so it's going to be interesting to see. I wonder how I compare to them. Again, if I have some crazy outlandish opinions, I just hope you guys go easy on me in the comments down below. But with that being said, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Leave some opinions about, what kind of videos you want to see me tackle next. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time, and bye-bye.